My sister used me as free childcare, so I showed her the price. The very same day my older sister became pregnant, she decided I should press pause on my life to care for her child. It didn't matter if it was a holiday or my own wedding, being babysitter took priority, and I needed to get that. Trish's entitlement started before her baby even arrived. She showed up at my apartment one evening with this color-coded binder. She flipped it open and started explaining my new babysitting schedule. Tuesday and Wednesday nights were my overnight shifts because those were her nights off. Fridays through Sundays, I had the morning slot so she could sleep in. Christmas Day was marked in bright red with all-day coverage written across it. I actually laughed when I saw it, but she didn't. The next week she posted on Facebook about how blessed she was to have family stepping up. She tagged me in this long post about how I'd already agreed to help raise her baby. My phone blew up with relatives commenting about what a wonderful aunt I was. When I called her to ask what the hell she was thinking, she said mom already knew about the arrangement, and mom did know. She called me that night to remind me that family helps family. After the baby was born, things went from annoying to insane. When little Mason was 6 months old, Trish showed up at my office during a client presentation. Someone knocked on the conference room door and mouthed emergency. That emergency turned out to be Trish in the lobby with Mason in his carrier. Perfect timing, she said, checking her phone. My appointment is in 20 minutes. What appointment? My manicure. I just remembered how badly I needed one. She was out the door before I could process what happened, but that wasn't even the final straw. You see, my best friend from college was getting married and I was her maid of honor. But minutes before we were set to head inside, I heard crying from the parking lot. Me and everyone else turned to look, and there was Trish, pushing Mason's stroller. She handed me a note that said, "Handle this, I have a date," and left. Mason was screaming. Everyone was looking at me like, what the hell? And that's when I noticed these finger-shaped bruises on Mason's arms for the first time. I had to spend the wedding ceremony in the bathroom trying to comfort Mason. As if this wasn't bad enough, my mother was practically Trish, just older. She started bringing Mason to my apartment unannounced. I'd come home from work to find her on my couch with him. The second she'd see me, she'd drop everything and leave. Didn't ask if it was convenient, didn't give me money, just up and left. The worst about was how Mason flinched whenever someone moved too fast. He was clearly not taken care of properly. Always hungry, his clothes dirty more often than clean. Everything came to a head when I announced my trip to Germany. My fiance proposed 8 months ago during his last visit, and we hadn't seen each other since. The distance was killing us, and I'd saved every penny to afford the trip. When I told family, Trish's response was immediate. She booked her own vacation for the same dates. "Yes, you'll have to reschedule," she laughed during dinner. I already put my deposit down. Mom nodded, saying family comes first, and I could see my fiance anytime. They had my babysitting schedule all planned out. I remember being furious, and for the first time ever, I said no. I wasn't watching the kid. I had my own life to live. I should have known from how quickly they said that was fine and they'd find someone else. They had something planned. I didn't hear from them until the morning of my flight. I woke at 4:47 to blood-curdling screams outside my door. I was terrified, so I walked to the door in my pajamas slowly. I opened the letter slot and peeked through it, and that's when I saw it. It was Mason, alone on my doorstep in just a diaper and t-shirt. I opened the door and saw the note taped to his shirt. "Thanks for watching him." I was shocked. I took Mason in and felt how freezing he was. I wrapped him in a warm blanket and started soothing him with one arm, while with the other I picked up the phone and called my boyfriend. He knew about the Trish situation, and when I told him what was happening, he didn't even hesitate, just said he was booking the next flight here. He sent me confirmation of a flight in 5 hours time within minutes, and that's when I got to work. I checked the security camera outside my house, which showed Trish dropping Mason at 4:31 a.m. at my door. She didn't even knock, just left him and ran back to her car. I repeat, she left her infant outside in just a t-shirt in the middle of January without knowing if anyone was even home. CPS arrived within minutes. The woman took one look at Mason's bruises and the security footage and called for emergency removal. They took Mason away that morning. Trish actually texted me when she landed, asking how he was, and when I bluffed that he was fine, she thumbs up my message. I didn't hear from her for the entire 2 weeks, and when she came back, she waited another 2 whole days to come get him. But then she showed up. "Why don't I see Mason anywhere?" I told her CPS had him. The look on her face went from confused to furious in seconds. She started screaming that I had no right, that I ruined her life, that family doesn't do this to family. Her voice cracked on the last word. Mom showed up 20 minutes later. She must have broken every speed limit to get there that fast. She walked in already yelling about how I betrayed the family, and how could I do this to my own sister. Her face was red, her usually perfect hair disheveled. I showed them both the security footage on my laptop. Mom went quiet for about 10 seconds before she started making excuses. Trish was stressed. She was a single mother. She just needed a break. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The CPS caseworker had given me her card and told me to call if either of them showed up. I texted her while they were still ranting. She said she'd send someone over immediately and to not let them leave with any of Mason's things I still had. Trish tried to push past me to get to Mason's diaper bag I'd kept. I blocked her and she actually shoved me hard. I fell backwards and hit my head on the coffee table. Everything went fuzzy for a second, stars dancing in my vision. When I could focus again, my fiance was there. He'd arrived just in time to see Trish push me. He helped me up and positioned himself between me and my family. He told them to leave immediately or he'd call the police. His accent was thicker when he was angry, and I'd never seen him this furious. Mom tried to guilt trip him too. She said he didn't understand because he wasn't family, that this was between us. He just pulled out his phone and started dialing. They left, but not before Trish screamed that this wasn't over, that she'd get her son back and make me pay for what I'd done. The door slammed so hard the pictures on my wall shook. The next few days were hell. Trish and Mom tag-teamed me with constant calls and texts, their numbers lighting up my phone screen every few minutes. When I finally blocked their numbers after the 100th call, they started using other people's phones. I'd answer thinking it was work or a friend, only to hear Mom's shrill voice demanding I stop this nonsense, or Trish sobbing about how I was ruining her life. Aunt Linda called crying about how I was tearing the family apart, her voice breaking as she begged me to reconsider. Uncle Pete left voicemails saying I needed to fix this before it got worse, his usually jovial tone replaced with something darker, almost threatening. I changed my locks after finding scratches around the keyhole one morning. The metal was scraped and gouged, like someone had been working at it with amateur tools. My landlord, a gruff but kind older man named Frank, said it looked like someone tried picking it. He shook his head, muttering about how he'd seen this kind of thing before with domestic disputes. I installed a doorbell camera too, catching Trish lurking around my building at weird hours. The footage showed her pacing back and forth at 3 a.m., staring up at my window, sometimes for hours at a time. The CPS investigation moved fast. therapist. The caseworker, Rebecca, called me in for an interview within 48 hours of my report. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes but a no-nonsense demeanor, wearing a simple gray suit and sensible shoes. She asked about everything I'd witnessed, taking notes on a yellow legal pad with practiced efficiency. I told her about the bruises I'd seen on Mason's arms, perfect finger-shaped marks that made my stomach turn. I described the neglect, how Mason was always hungry and dirty, his diaper sagging and unchanged for hours. She nodded like she'd heard it all before, occasionally asking clarifying questions in a gentle but persistent manner. Trish had to take parenting classes and submit to home visits. The court mandate was clear and non-negotiable. She texted me from a friend's phone saying I'd ruined her life, and she had to cancel her gym membership to afford the classes. Like that was supposed to make me feel guilty. She went on about how her Pilates instructor would be disappointed, how she'd lose her progress, as if her fitness routine mattered more than her son's welfare. My fiancé extended his stay without hesitation. He worked remotely from my apartment, setting up a makeshift office at my dining table. He'd make coffee while I dealt with the family drama, the smell of fresh grounds becoming oddly comforting during the chaos. We'd planned this romantic reunion for months, restaurant reservations, weekend trips, all the things long-distance couples dream about. Instead, he was helping me document harassment, taking screenshots and organizing evidence into clearly labeled folders on my laptop. 2 weeks after CPS took Mason, I got a call from Rebecca. Her voice was professional, but I could hear the weight in it. Trish had failed her substance test, coke. Rebecca said it explained a lot about her erratic behavior, the mood swings, the paranoia. They were placing Mason with a foster family while the investigation continued. She assured me it was a good family, experienced with traumatized children. That's when things escalated. I came home from work to find my apartment door wide open, the hallway light spilling into my darkened living room. My heart hammered as I pushed the door wider, phone ready to dial 911. Nothing was stolen, but everything was moved slightly. Pictures turned backwards so the faces were hidden, couch cushions flipped to show the worn undersides, kitchen drawers open just enough to be noticeable. Even my books were rearranged, spines facing inward. The message was clear. They could get in whenever they wanted. I called the police, but without proof of who did it. They just filed a report. The officer, barely older than me, suggested I stay somewhere else for a while. He looked around my violated space with sympathy, but said without cameras inside or witnesses, there wasn't much they could do. My fiancé booked us a hotel that night, a nice one downtown with proper security and keycard access to the elevators. Mom showed up at my office the next day. Security called up saying my mother was there for a family emergency. I knew it was bullpoop, but went down anyway, my stomach nodding with each step. She was in the lobby looking haggard, no makeup hiding the dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed and pulled back in a messy bun. She'd aged years in just weeks. She begged me to recant my statement to CPS. Her voice cracked as she said Trish was Sewers Lytle, that I was unaliving my sister. She grabbed my arm when I tried to leave, her nails digging in hard enough to leave crescent marks. Security had to escort her out while she screamed about family loyalty, how dad would be ashamed of me, how I was no daughter of hers. My coworkers pretended not to stare as I returned to my desk, shaking. I started getting weird packages at work. Baby clothes with notes attached arrived daily. He misses his aunt. You did this. Family forever. One contained a onesie I'd bought Mason for Christmas, still with the tags on. Another had a photo of Mason crying, clearly taken recently. HR got involved after the 5th package. They increased security and walked me to my car each night, the security guard making small talk to ease the awkwardness. Trish's ex-boyfriend reached out on Facebook. His message was long and desperate, explaining how he'd been trying to get custody of Mason for months, but Trish always convinced judges he was unstable. He had documentation of her substance use dating back to her pregnancy. He'd been building a case but needed witnesses who would actually testify against her. We met at a coffee shop downtown, a busy place with lots of witnesses. He looked exhausted but determined, wearing a wrinkled button-down that suggested he'd come straight from work. He brought a folder thick with evidence, text messages where Trish admitted to using while pregnant, joking about how Mason would be a chill baby. Photos of Mason's injuries he'd taken during his supervised visits, each one dated and annotated. Hospital records from when Mason had been brought in for falling off the changing table 3 times. The same excuse, 3 different hospitals. He said Trish had been using Mason as a paycheck. Child support, government assistance, family handouts. She collected it all. She'd blown through her inheritance from dad in less than 2 years and needed money for her lifestyle. Designer bags, expensive dinners, weekend trips to Vegas. Mason was just another income source. The man's hands shook as he showed me bank statements proving he'd never missed a child support payment, despite Trish telling everyone he was a deadbeat. I gave him Rebecca's contact information. He thanked me with tears in his eyes, saying he just wanted his son safe. He showed me videos on his phone of his apartment, a nursery already set up, toys and books waiting. I believed him. This was a father who wanted his child, not a bitter ex seeking revenge. At night, Trish showed up at the hotel. I don't know how she found us. We'd been so careful. She was high, eyes dilated so wide the blue was just a thin ring, talking fast and not making complete sense. She pounded on our door screaming about family betrayal and how I owed her. She ranted about changing my diapers when I was a baby, how she'd protected me from bullies in school. Other guests complained and hotel security removed her, but not before she'd kicked the door hard enough to leave a dent. My fiancé had enough. His usual calm demeanor cracked as he called his lawyer back in Germany, who recommended someone local. We filed for restraining orders against both Trish and Mom the next morning. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia, said we had more than enough evidence with the security footage, text messages, and witness statements. She'd seen cases like this before, families torn apart by addiction and enabling. The court date came quickly. Trish showed up looking like a different person, professionally dressed in a navy suit I'd never seen before, hair done in an elegant updo, makeup perfect. She'd hired a lawyer who argued I was vindictive and jealous of her motherhood. Mom testified that I'd always been difficult and rebellious, painting a picture of me as an unstable troublemaker who'd resented Trish since childhood. I played the security footage of Mason being abandoned. The judge's face changed completely, her jaw tightening as she watched a baby left in the freezing cold. Then I showed the harassment texts, scrolling through message after message of threats and manipulation. The photos of my apartment break-in made her lean forward, studying each violated space, the packages at work, each one carefully documented by HR. My fiancé testified about witnessing Trish assault me, his accent thick with emotion as he described her violence. Trish's lawyer tried arguing it was family miscommunication blown out of proportion. He suggested counseling, mediation, anything but legal intervention. The judge wasn't buying it. She granted both restraining orders immediately. Trish had to stay 500 feet away from me, my home, and my workplace. Mom got the same restrictions. The judge's voice was stern as she warned them that any violation would result in immediate arrest. Outside the courthouse, Trish lost it completely. She screamed that I'd regret this, that family was forever, that I'd need her one day when I had kids of my own. Her carefully styled hair came loose as she gestured wildly. Court security stepped in when she moved toward me, hands clenched into fists. Mom just stared at me with this cold disappointment, like I was a stranger wearing her daughter's face, before walking away without a word. The restraining orders didn't stop everything. Other family members became flying monkeys, doing Trish and Mom's bidding. Cousin Sarah posted on Facebook about how I was mentally unstable and destroying the family. She shared old photos of family gatherings, circling my face and adding cruel captions. Aunt Karen shared articles about false CPS reports ruining innocent mothers' lives, tagging me in each one. I started documenting everything obsessively. Every post got screenshot and saved, every text from random numbers recorded, every time I saw one of them near my building logged with time and date, my laptop filled with folders of evidence. My lawyer said it was smart to build a case for extended protection. The judges appreciated thorough documentation. Mason's father got emergency custody after the substance test results. He sent me a photo of Mason in his new room, finally looking clean and fed. The baby was actually smiling, wearing fresh clothes that fit properly. He said the boy was doing better, sleeping through the night without the terrified crying, not flinching anymore when adults moved too quickly. It was the first good news in weeks and I cried at my desk, relief flooding through me. Trish violated the restraining order 2 weeks later. I was grocery shopping, lost in thought comparing pasta sauces, when she appeared in the cereal aisle. She looked rough, weight loss making her clothes hang loose, her designer jeans held up with a belt pulled to the last notch. Her face was gaunt, cheekbones sharp under pale skin. She started following me, staying just far enough away to claim coincidence, pretending to shop while keeping me in sight. I called 911 from the produce section, my hands shaking as I pretended to examine apples. She must have realized because she left before they arrived, abandoning a half-full cart in the frozen foods. But the store had cameras. The footage clearly showed her following me for 15 minutes through multiple aisles, even doubling back when I changed direction. That was violation number 1. Mom was smarter. She sent other people to do her dirty work, staying technically within the bounds of the restraining order. My dad's sister, who'd stayed neutral throughout the drama, suddenly started calling about reconciliation. She said Mom was heartbroken, that I needed to be the bigger person, that family was more important than being right. I recorded the calls on my lawyer's advice, Patricia saying the pattern of harassment through proxies could be useful later. Work became my safe space. My boss, Janet, knew the situation and let me work from home when needed. She'd check in daily, offering support beyond just professional courtesy. My coworkers formed a protective barrier, screening my calls and visitors. The receptionist, a former bouncer named Marcus, became an expert at spotting family members trying to get in. He kept a photo list at his desk of people to turn away. My fiancé had to return to Germany for work. The morning he left, we both cried in the airport parking lot. He promised to come back soon, to start the visa process so we could be together permanently. He'd already started learning about American immigration law, bookmarking lawyers and filing requirements. I watched his plane take off feeling completely alone, the weight of everything crushing down without his steady presence. That night, I found a note under my door. You can't hide forever. No signature, but I recognized Trish's handwriting, the same loopy script from birthday cards over the years. The doorbell camera hadn't caught anyone. They were getting smarter about avoiding detection, learning the camera's blind spots. I called Rebecca for an update on Mason. She said he was thriving with his father. The man had enrolled him in daycare where he was learning to socialize with other children. He'd gotten him medical care for the neglect, vitamin deficiencies corrected, dental work scheduled, even therapy for the trauma. The foster family who'd had him temporarily had written a glowing report about the father's dedication during visits. They'd never seen a parent work so hard to prepare for custody. The final custody hearing was scheduled for next month. Rebecca said my testimony would be crucial. Trish was fighting it, claiming the father was abusive despite no evidence, that the substance test was wrong despite being confirmed twice, that everyone was conspiring against her. Classic deflection. She'd hired a new lawyer who was known for taking difficult cases, probably the only one who'd still work with her. I hired a security company to check my apartment for bugs after finding my conversations repeated in family gossip. Things I'd only said in my living room were being quoted back to me by flying monkey relatives. They found 2 recording devices, one in my living room lamp and another in my bedroom smoke detector. Professional grade equipment, not cheap stuff from a spy shop. The police added it to my file but said proving who placed them was nearly impossible without fingerprints or purchase records. Sleep became difficult. Every noise made me jump. A neighbor's door closing, a car backfiring, even my refrigerator's hum seemed threatening. I'd check the locks multiple times, refresh the camera feeds obsessively, patrol my small apartment with a baseball bat. My doctor prescribed anxiety medication after I admitted I'd been awake for 3 days straight, saying the stress was affecting my health. I'd lost 15 pounds without trying, my clothes hanging loose like Trish's had. Then came violation number 2. I was walking to my car after work, keys between my fingers like I'd learned in self-defense class, when Trish appeared from behind a van. She was definitely high, pupils blown wide despite the parking garage's bright lights, movements jerky and unpredictable. She grabbed my arm before I could react, spinning me around with surprising strength. She ranted that I had to fix this, that Mason needed his mother, that the family was falling apart because of my selfishness. Her grip was painful, desperate, nails breaking skin through my jacket. I screamed for help and she let go, running to a waiting car. Mom was driving, her face a mask of determination as she peeled out of the garage. This time the police took it seriously. 2 violations meant potential jail time. They arrested Trish that night at Mom's house. The body cam footage later showed Trish trying to flush something down the toilet, while Mom argued with officers about warrants. Mom was charged as an accomplice for driving the getaway car. The mugshots made the local crime blog. Trish looking strung out and defeated, Mom somehow still managing to look disappointed in the camera. Family members went nuclear. My phone rang non-stop until I changed my number, the constant buzzing giving me anxiety attacks. They created fake social media accounts to message me, each one with slightly different versions of my name. Uncle Pete even showed up at my work, red-faced and yelling before security turned him away. Marcus later told me he'd threatened to wait in the parking lot, but a call to the police had discouraged him. The family closed ranks around Trish and Mom, painting me as the villain who destroyed everything. My lawyer filed for extended protection orders and criminal charges. The prosecutor, a young woman who dealt with similar cases, said with the video evidence and witnesses, conviction was likely. Trish faced up to a year in jail for violating the restraining order twice. Mom faced 6 months as an accomplice. Patricia explained explained that judges were taking these violations more seriously now, especially with the clear pattern of escalation. I moved apartments without telling anyone in the family. Only my fiancé, my boss, and my lawyer had the new address. I hired movers who specialized in discreet relocations for domestic violence victims. They moved me out at 3 a.m. to avoid detection, using unmarked trucks and taking different routes to shake any potential followers. They even had strategies for losing tails, checking mirrors constantly. The new place had better security. Doorman building where visitors had to be announced. Cameras everywhere, including in the elevators, key fob access that tracked entry and exit. The doorman, an ex-military guy named James, took my situation seriously after I explained it. I finally felt like I could breathe. My fiancé helped me decorate over video calls, making it feel like home instead of a hideout. We picked out curtains together, him holding up options to his laptop camera from a store in Berlin. Mason's custody hearing arrived on a gray Thursday morning. I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought for job interviews, pressed perfectly. I'd prepared my statement with my lawyer, practicing until I could say it without crying. The courtroom was packed with family on Trish's side. They glared at me as I walked to the witness stand, some muttering under their breath. I ignored them, focusing on the judge, an older woman with steel gray hair and knowing eyes. I testified about everything, the abandonment on that freezing night, describing how Mason's lips had been turning blue, the bruises I'd documented, showing photos that made several people in the gallery wince, the neglect that left him underweight and behind on developmental milestones, the substance use I'd witnessed, Trish barely trying to hide it anymore. I brought printed screenshots of texts where she'd admitted to using while pregnant, photos of Mason's injuries that his father had shared, the security footage on a USB drive that showed her leaving him alone multiple times. Trish's lawyer tried to discredit me, suggesting I was jealous of my sister's life, but the evidence spoke for itself. Mason's father testified next. He brought medical records showing Mason's improvement in just weeks, weight gain, healing bruises, improved motor skills, daycare reports about his development, how he'd gone from a withdrawn baby to one who played with others, even a video of Mason laughing and playing, reaching for toys, making happy sounds instead of the constant whimpering I remembered. The difference was striking. This was a happy, healthy baby now. Trish testified last. She blamed everyone but herself, said I was jealous of her beauty and success, that her ex was abusive despite no police reports or evidence, that CPS was biased against young mothers. She claimed the substances were planted by her ex, that she was a perfect mother who'd made one mistake. Even her lawyer looked uncomfortable with the lies, shuffling papers and avoiding eye contact with the judge. The judge made her decision immediately. Full custody to the father. Trish's parental rights were terminated pending completion of rehab and parenting classes. She had to pass substance tests for 6 months before even getting supervised visitation. The requirements were strict. Inpatient rehab, weekly therapy, parenting classes, regular substance tests. The judge's voice was firm as she stated that Mason's safety was the only priority. Trish collapsed in the courtroom, full dramatic breakdown, screaming about injustice and conspiracy. She had to be physically supported by her lawyer as she sobbed. Mom tried to comfort her but was restrained by bailiffs due to her pending charges. Other family members shouted at me as I left. Someone threw a water bottle that missed, splashing against the courtroom door. Aunt Karen screamed that I'd unalived my sister, that her blood would be on my hands. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Aunt Linda, Dad's sister who'd moved to Colorado years ago. She said she'd been following the situation through family gossip and wanted me to know I did the right thing. Her voice was warm, supportive, so different from what I'd been hearing. She told me about Trish's behavior as a teenager that the family covered up, the stealing from Dad's wallet, the lying about where she spent nights, the first rehab stint at 17 that Mom told everyone was a wellness retreat, how Mom always enabled her, making excuses, paying off debts, cleaning up messes, how Dad tried to get Trish help before he died, but Mom undermined him, accusing him of being too harsh on their sensitive daughter. It explained so much. The family dysfunction ran deep, generations of enabling and covering up problems, the anger at me for breaking the cycle, for refusing to participate in the delusion. Aunt Linda said she was proud of me for standing up to them. She gave me her number and said to call if I needed support from someone who understood. She'd escaped the family dynamics years ago and never regretted it. My fiancé started the visa process immediately. The immigration lawyer said it would take months, but we'd eventually be together. We made plans for him to visit every few months until then, already booking flights for the next year. The distance still sucked, but having an end date helped. We talked every day, him waking up early to catch me before work, me staying up late to say goodnight. Work promoted me to senior analyst. My boss said despite the personal chaos, my performance had been exceptional. She'd noticed how I'd thrown myself into projects, using work as an escape but producing excellent results. The raise would help with the legal bills and new apartment costs. Finally, something positive. My coworkers threw a small celebration, careful to keep it low-key given everything else happening. Mom's trial came first. She pleaded guilty to avoid jail time, her lawyer convincing her it was the best option, got probation, community service at a local food bank, and extended restraining orders. She had to stay away from me for 5 years. She cried during sentencing, saying she just wanted her family together, that she'd lost both daughters now. The judge reminded her that actions have consequences, that she'd chosen to enable abuse over protecting a child. Trish's trial was messier. She pleaded not guilty, fired 3 lawyers who told her to take a plea deal, made wild accusations about conspiracies involving CPS, her ex, and me. She claimed we'd planned this to steal Mason and her inheritance. The prosecutor played the security footage of her leaving Mason in the cold. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty on all counts: child endangerment, neglect, violating a restraining order twice. She got 8 months in county jail, 2 years probation, mandatory rehab that she'd have to complete before even being considered for visitation rights. The judge said she was lucky Mason survived that night or charges would have been worse. Attempted unaliving wasn't off the table originally. Trish had to be dragged out screaming about appeals and injustice, still not taking any responsibility. Her last words were that I'd regret this when I needed family. I already had the family I'd chosen. My fiancé, my work friends, Aunt Linda. They were worth more than blood relatives who'd enabled abuse and chosen an addict over an innocent baby. I thought that would be the end of it. Trish in jail, Mom on probation, restraining orders in place. I was wrong. 3 months into Trish's sentence, I got a call from Rebecca. Mason's father had been in a car accident. Some hammered driver ran a red light and T-boned him. He was in the ICU with internal bleeding and broken ribs. Mason was okay. He'd been at daycare when it happened. Rebecca said they needed an emergency placement while his dad recovered. She asked if I'd consider taking Mason Mason temporarily. My first instinct was hell no, I'd just gotten my life back together. But then I thought about that little boy bouncing between homes again. My fiance and I talked for hours that night. He said whatever I decided, he'd support. That's when I knew I'd marry this man. I called Rebecca back and said yes. The paperwork was rushed through in 48 hours. Mason arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. He was bigger now, walking and babbling. He didn't remember me at first, hiding behind the social worker's leg. I'd bought some toys and set up a small area in my living room. He warmed up after an hour, especially when I brought out goldfish crackers. That's when the real shitstorm started. Someone at CPS leaked to my family that I had Mason. My phone started blowing up from numbers I didn't recognize. I'd changed it twice already, but somehow they kept finding it. The first visit came from Aunt Sarah. She showed up at my building trying to sweet talk the doorman. James called up to warn me, and I watched her on the security monitor arguing with him for 20 minutes. She kept saying she just wanted to see her great nephew, that family should stick together. Then came the letters, dozens of them, forwarded from my old address. Mom writing about how God would judge me. Trish somehow sending letters from jail about how I stole her baby. Extended family I barely knew weighing in on my choices. I kept them all in a file my lawyer suggested maintaining. The real problem started when cousin Mike figured out where I worked. He started calling the main line pretending to be clients. Janet had to change our phone system to screen calls better. He'd leave voicemails about family loyalty and how I was raising Mason wrong. 2 weeks into the placement, I was at the park with Mason when I noticed a woman watching us. She kept pretending to read a book, but her eyes tracked our every move. When I packed up to leave, she followed us. I ducked into a busy store and called 911. Turns out it was Mom's friend from church. She admitted Mom asked her to check on Mason since she couldn't. The police gave her a warning about stalking. Mom claimed she didn't know it was illegal since her friend wasn't technically violating the restraining order. My lawyer filed harassment charges. The judge wasn't amused by Mom's technicality argument. She extended the restraining order to include third-party contact. Any flying monkeys would face their own charges now. Mason's dad got out of the hospital after 3 weeks. He was in rough shape, wheelchair-bound temporarily, couldn't lift anything over 10 pounds. His apartment was a third-floor walk-up. No way he could care for Mason yet. We worked out a schedule. I kept Mason during the week, and his dad's parents took weekends. They were good people, devastated their son almost died, but grateful I'd stepped up. His mom taught me Mason's favorite songs, and his dad showed me the specific way Mason liked his bottles. That's when Trish's early release hearing came up. Good behavior apparently meant something even when you screamed at guards daily. Her lawyer argued she'd completed anger management and parenting classes in jail. The prosecutor called me as a witness. I brought photos of Mason thriving, weight charts showing his growth, milestone achievements he'd hit, videos of him laughing and playing. Then I showed the harassment from jail, letters she'd sent through other inmates, recorded calls where she threatened me. The judge denied early release. Trish lost it in court again. She screamed that I'd stolen her life, that I was probably poisoning Mason against her. The bailiffs dragged her out while she yelled about unaliving me when she got out. Her lawyer actually quit mid-hearing, stating he could no longer represent her after those threats. That threat got her another 6 months. Terroristic threats, they called it. Mom tried to visit her but got turned away. Turns out Trish had lost visitation privileges for starting a fight with another inmate. Meanwhile, Mason was doing great. He started saying real words, not just babbling. His first clear word was dog when he saw James's German Shepherd. He'd toddle around my apartment exploring everything, getting into cabinets despite the baby locks. His dad improved slowly. Physical therapy 3 times a week, learning to walk again. He'd video call every night to read Mason bedtime stories. The dedication was incredible. This man fought through pain just to maintain that routine. 4 months into the placement, I was grocery shopping with Mason when I ran into my high school friend Emma. She took one look at Mason in the cart and her face went white. Turns out she'd been Trish's friend too, had cut her off when the substance use got bad. Emma told me things I didn't know. How Trish had been dealing to support her habit, how she'd brought Mason to substance houses, how Emma found her passed out once with Mason crying in a soiled diaper for hours. She'd called CPS herself months before I did. She gave me her number and said she'd testify if needed. Said she had photos and texts that proved Trish was unfit way before I got involved. The guilt she carried for not pushing harder was visible in her eyes. Uncle Pete tried one more time to interfere. He showed up at Mason's daycare claiming to be picking him up for a family emergency. The daycare called me immediately. I'd warned them about possible attempts. The police arrested him for attempted kidnapping. That arrest split the family. Some finally realized they'd gone too far. Aunt Linda told me several cousins reached out to her expressing doubts about Trish's version of events. The mugshot of Uncle Pete in handcuffs was a wake-up call, but the diehards doubled down. They created a Facebook group called Justice for Trish, where they posted old family photos and made me out to be evil. They raised money for her commissary account and legal fees. Someone even made t-shirts. I documented everything. Every post, every threat, every attempted contact. My lawyer said we had enough for a civil suit, but I just wanted them to stop. The criminal cases were draining enough. Mason's dad finally got clearance to take him back after 6 months. He'd moved to a ground floor apartment, modified everything for safety, even hired a part-time nanny to help during his remaining recovery. The transition was bittersweet. I'd gotten attached to the little guy, his laugh, the way he'd cuddle into me during nap time, how he'd learned to say my name. But seeing him run to his dad with pure joy made it worth it. This was where he belonged. The final custody hearing came 8 months after everything started. Trish appeared via video link from jail, wearing orange instead of her usual designer clothes. She'd lost more weight, her face gaunt and angry. She still demanded full custody. The judge reviewed everything: my testimony, the dad's recovery and preparation, Emma's evidence of past neglect, the harassment campaign, the attempted kidnapping. Even Mason's grandmother testified about finding substances in Trish's diaper bag during a visit. Trish's rights were permanently terminated. No visitation until Mason turned 18, and only if he chose it. She screamed so loud they cut her video feed. The judge said it was the clearest case of an unfit parent she'd seen in 20 years. Mom's probation officer called me later. Mom had violated by trying to contact me through a cousin. Back to court she went. The judge gave her 30 days in jail and extended probation. Maybe that would finally get through to her. My fiance's visa got approved right after the trial ended. He flew in 2 weeks later with just suitcases, ready to start over. We got married at the courthouse with Janet and James as witnesses. Simple, perfect, no family drama. Mason's dad invited us to his first birthday party. Watching that happy, healthy kid smash cake in his face, surrounded by people who actually loved him, was everything. His dad thanked me again, said I saved both their lives. Trish got out after serving her full sentence. She immediately violated parole by driving past my old apartment. Back to jail for another 3 months. The cycle continued, but I stopped tracking it. Not my circus anymore. Some family members eventually reached out to apologize. Cousin Sarah admitted she'd been wrong, that seeing the evidence at trial opened her eyes. I accepted her apology but kept my distance. Trust was earned, not inherited. Mom never apologized. Last I heard, she was living with Uncle Pete, still posting about her stolen grandson on Facebook, still playing victim, still enabling Trish from a distance. Some people never change. Mason's dad and I stayed in touch. He sent updates on first days of school, soccer games, normal kid stuff. Mason grew up happy and safe, which was all that mattered. Sometimes doing the right thing means losing everything else. My life moved forward. New job, new city eventually, normal problems that didn't involve restraining orders or custody battles. My fiance and I had our own kids, raised them with boundaries and consequences. Funny how that works. Looking back, I don't regret a thing. That morning I found Mason on my doorstep. I made a choice. Family protected each other, but that meant protecting the vulnerable from their abusers, not enabling the abuse. Mason deserved better, and I made sure he got it.